Now for hard twitch bait style lures, these types of retrieves are going to be very similar across the board when it comes to hard twitch baits, whether they be floating style, sinking style, suspending style, and also different brands across the board. They're typically not going to have a lip on them. With lipped plugs, there are a few other types of retrieves you can use, but with these, the standard go-to retrieve right off the bat is going to be the twitch and pause. So casting that lure out. And with these types of lures, depending on if it's floating, sinking, or suspending, you want to let it either sink to the depth that you want to fish it, or just start retrieving immediately if it's really shallow. You don't want it to go down too far. So cast the lure out, and you're just going to do a few twitches and a pause. Very similar if you were using, a soft plastic jerk bait. A few twitches just like so, and pause. And as usual, on that pause, make sure you reel in the slack so you don't miss out on a strike. Now that pause can be really great, especially for suspending twitch baits, because that helps keep the lure sort of in the strike zone for a while. That lure will twitch, and then it'll just stop there and sit in the water column where you stopped it at. So if a fish is sort of trying to figure out if it wants to eat it or not, it can have that opportunity to go after it. So a few twitches and a pause. Now a faster version of that twitch and pause retrieve is just going to be a constant erratic retrieve. Again, very similar to what we did with the jerk shad. Casting the lure out, and you're just going to do a steady reel as you constantly pop the rod tip every now and then. So the reeling part is really just bringing in the slack so you don't have too much slack in your line, and you're using the rod tip to do all the work to move the lure. Now a quick tip, if you find that the line, your leader is getting fouled up on the front hook too much during your retrieve, the biggest thing is to make sure you don't have a lot of slack in your line when you're retrieving it. So when you cast it out, try to feather your line to keep it from, getting too much line out there, a big bow in your line. Keep the rod tip up, reel down into the slack, and then begin your retrieve. And that should help keep the slack out of your line so that that front hook doesn't get fouled up on the leader. And then another thing you can do, if you're retrieving the lure and you're noticing it's getting fouled up too much on your line, try not to be too aggressive with the pops. Back off a little bit. Could depend on the action of your rod. So if you're popping it too hard, you're creating a lot of slack in your line that way as well. So back up off of the aggressive pops. Just use the wrist gently. Let that rod tip do the work. You don't want to really crank the lure and create a lot of slack in your line that way. Now the last type of retrieve I want to share is sort of like a drift of the lure. It's almost similar to dead sticking, like with the soft plastic jerk shads. So you're going to want current. Current is going to be key, and also you're going to want to be using a twitch bait that suspends in the water column. So what you're going to do with this, obviously you're going to want current. You want to be positioned up current from where you're trying to target. If there was a cut between two islands right here, I would want to be up current from it. That way the current is going towards the islands. And what I would do is cast this out just before that cut and keep the bail open and let it drift down into that cut, into the strike zone. Once it gets there, once it drifts, you feel that lure's there, give it a couple pops, bring it back to you, and then let it drift back down. That can be a really good technique, especially on slow days, and you have current and you have sort of choke points where you can let that lure drift down into.